If you're not aspiring to move up to that next level, that's a huge red flag. And I found that for myself too. I was looking at these mostly men who were like these huge executive producers or showrunners. And I was like, they're never home with their families. They're never going on vacations. They're not seeing, I don't know. I did not want that. And that's a red
Yeah.
flag, I think, to really say, then why are you climbing this ladder if you don't want to get to that next level?
Welcome to the Career Change for Women podcast. I'm Brittany Cates, career coach and fellow career shifter, here to help you leave unfulfilling work behind. Every Thursday, I share stories, strategies, and confidence boosting insights to help you gain clarity, take action, and create a career you love. Let's shift your day job together. Today's guest is Shannon Russell, a former television producer turned entrepreneur and career transition coach. After spending 16 years working with top brands like MTV and A&E, Shannon made a bold move, pivoting to entrepreneurship to create a business that aligned with her values and allowed her to be more present with her family. Now, Shannon helps women who are ready to leave their 9 to 5 and build their own businesses. She guides them through creating exit strategies, embracing a new career identity, and stepping confidently into their second act. Shannon's mission is to help women create businesses they love, earning 10K plus months while doing what they're passionate about. If you're ready to make your own career shift, this episode is definitely a must listen. So please join me in welcoming Shannon Russell to the podcast. Hi, Shannon. How are you doing today?
Good, Brittany. Thank you so much for having me here.
Yeah, I'm excited to chat with you because our missions seem to be aligned. And so I'm sure we'll have a lot to discuss. But
I
before
hope
we
so.
jump into that, I would love for you to share your career story and where you started, how it evolved, and then what you're doing today.
Sure. Yeah, I started my career wanting to be a television producer. So I began working at MTV in New York City right out of college and then kept on going there. Ended up in Los Angeles working for a ton of different companies, doing different shows, entertainment news, reality, digital video, and worked for about 16 years in television. Ended up back on the East Coast working in New York, and then at that point, I had 2 little boys, and it was right around then where I realized, okay, these long hours, the travel, I was missing first birthdays and Halloweens, and it all started just feeling like it was a little too much, and I wanted to start something different as much as I loved it. And that's where I decided to take some time, do some soul searching, figure out what my second act would be. And after a few missteps, I ended up investing in a franchise business, and that was my first business venture that I ran for over 8 years. And that was teaching children STEM education. And it was perfect because I could bring my kids along with me and I ran the business out of my house. A few years later, I got a brick and mortar, but I was still able to have my kids with me. And then I sold that business just this past year. And I guess about 3+ years ago, I started my career coaching business because I saw so many people were asking me, how did you go from that to this? Can you help me too? So it just seemed like a natural transition.
Yeah, that's awesome. So you went through your own career transition and then people noticed that you were successful and that it was a very different, right? Um,
Yes, at my franchise, teaching young kids like robotics and coding, parents would say, "Oh, you must have been a great teacher. What grade did you teach?" And I would
yeah.
say, "Actually, I was a television producer." And it would spark that conversation. And where I live, it's about a 90-minute to 2-hour commute door to door into Manhattan. And so customers would say, "Can you help me figure out how I cannot do that commute anymore and I can make a
Mhm.
transition?" So I started realizing there was a need, especially for women who just felt like their career didn't align with maybe being a mom or a partner or taking care of family members.
Yeah, which I think comes up in your story too, right? Like your life circumstances changed and you even though you've been doing producing for 16 years, which seems like a really long time, did you ever have that moment of, "Oh, but I've been doing this forever. I don't know if I can leave it, or I don't know if I can do anything else?"
Absolutely, especially because it's such a niche industry. I kept thinking when I was starting to allow myself to think about what could be next, I was like, what can I do that's not on a studio set? What can I do? And it took that soul searching. And then finally I said, I manage people. I can manage people in a business. I
Mhm.
write scripts. I can write marketing copy. I can hire employees. And I started really looking at my skills and my experience. And I was like, I actually can do this. And it just took that leap for me to actually say, all right, I'm going to bet on myself and
Mhm.
try. But yeah, it was really scary because I really didn't think I had many options when I first set out.
Yeah. Yeah. So what are some things you did to start shifting that perspective so that you could get to a point where you were like, "Oh, look, my transferable skill. Well, maybe I can do this."
Yeah. You know what? I was those missteps because I knew I could pick up the phone and get another production job. But I was, no, I want to use this as a sign to like really figure out what's next. I have a newborn at home, a 3-year-old. And so I did what I thought was responsible and I got a local 9 to 5 job at an office. It was terribly toxic environment, not creative. It was like a bait and switch scenario,
Mhm.
and I was miserable, and I was like, "Okay, I'm contributing to my family, but this is just not what's going to sustain me long term." And so I decided to also at the same time go for my master's in education because being a teacher is really stable, I thought. And I thought,
Mm.
I guess I can do that." And both of those things did not align. So really a year into both of those things, I realized like this is just not it. So it was me sitting in the car one day, almost in tears from that awful 9 to 5 job, eating my lunch and thinking, what can I do? And I heard something that Marie Forleo said on her podcast. And it was about, like she always says, everything is figure outable.
Yeah.
And I started really thinking, you know what? As a producer, I produce these huge $1 million productions. How about I start producing my own life and let me figure out
Mm.
if I can produce a business using these skills? So that's when the wheels started turning.
I love that. I love that. I can produce my own life. It's like I'm the star of my own life, or I'm the main
Yes.
character, and it's let's start acting like it because
Instead of being in that desperate scenario, eating lunch alone in my car and just feeling
mm,
sorry for myself, I was like, what else can I do?
yeah, and I do think that everybody has a different turning point that's going to trigger that for them, and it almost comes down to, okay, I love that you were sitting in your car by yourself eating lunch because it's very relatable. We could even add crying maybe in the perfect hearers. And it's in those moments that it's okay,
Yeah.
this isn't what I want for myself. But you have to be able to recognize that and then also give yourself space to have those kinds of moments that are by yourself, right? So you do have the opportunity to be like, actually, what's happening right now? I don't like what I'm feeling. I don't this situation. And then it can start, but it really starts with paying attention. And
Yes.
if someone's already listening to this podcast, they're probably paying somewhat attention, right?
Yeah. And turning inwards and really having that silent moment to yourself to say, am I happy?
Mhm.
Do I like what I'm doing and how I'm living my life and showing up in the world? And I think when you have other people depending on you, you don't ask yourself that a lot because you
Mhm.
feel that pull of guilt and I need to do this for them and I'll put myself last.
Yeah.
And maybe it's when you hit that rock bottom or something triggers and all of a sudden you say, okay, I am worth at least considering another option.
Yeah. Yeah. Because your happiness affects all the people around you that you love and care about.
Mhm.
And so, yeah, I love maybe going back to that. I get to produce my own life. What were some of the like things about besides the toxic work environment, but about the office job or even the master's degree that were signals to you that, okay, I don't want this thing. I think I want this instead. Like, what were some of those things that came up for you?
The 9 to 5 job, they had said it was going to be creative. They're going to use my production skills and I was going to be this valuable asset. And that wasn't the case. And it was very much an environment where women just followed orders and the men ran everything creative. So I knew I couldn't be sustainable in an environment like that coming from such a creative background. And so I knew, okay, I don't think any office job is going to be what I need after being out and on sets and traveling and having this very different first act. And so I knew, okay, I'm not going to be able to put myself into this type of role. And then I would work and then I would go home, hang out with the kids, put them to bed, and then take my classes online for the master's degree. And I started realizing, okay, this is interesting, but I don't think it's for me. I think I'm trying to fit myself into what I think society thinks I should do. Because I had a lot of teacher friends who they loved their summers off. They thought it was really stable. And I was like, I don't think that's me. I like
Mhm.
my kids, but I don't know if I necessarily want to be a teacher. Um, so yeah, it was all those signs. And I think the fact that I let myself listen to them and I was thinking about the long term. And
Mm.
it wasn't like I was trying to put a band-aid on something right now. I was wondering, I had a really wonderful career that I love. If I am making this switch, I want to make sure it's something that I am going to feel fulfilled about and it's going to fit my current life now.
Yeah.
Um,
I love that. It's a little bit of a different perspective because you're like, I already had a career that I loved, which maybe not everybody can say, or maybe people could say for a time I loved it and then it went downhill. But the fact that you like walked away from a career that you loved because your priorities shifted,
yes.
right? And then it's I need to find that again, right? In some form or fashion. And how do I create that for myself if I'm not seeing that opportunity in front of me right now?
Yeah, exactly, and it wasn't and I know a lot of people come from careers that they just aren't happy in, and I was very fortunate, but yeah, I think thinking that, "Oh, I had this great career and I had this great resume, I'll be able to get any kind of job in the suburbs," and that wasn't true. It
Mhm.
just wasn't, and so that was like an eye opener, and to say, "Okay, I'll test these other things out." But then I think I knew I wasn't going to be the mom I wanted to be or the partner or the daughter or the friend if I didn't figure out what was next. And yeah, it was allowing myself that space, I think, to say, okay, you tried these, and now we have to try something else for
Mhm.
the long term. And a lot of my husband's a television producer. All of my friends were in the industry. So everyone was having an intervention with me of like, why are you doing this? Why are you
Mhm.
creating all of this friction when you have a good thing? But for me, I looked at it like, I did it. I checked the box. I wanna see
Mhm.
what's next. I want to be a class mom, and I wanna be there for their birthdays and be present, and the stress of leaving Manhattan to take a subway, to take a bus, to get back, and maybe miss picking them up at daycare just wasn't working for
Mhm.
me.
Yeah. So you have all these voices around you that are discouraging you from walking
Mhm.
away. How did you manage to root yourself in, no, this is what I want, or this is how I feel about it, and thank you for your opinion. But next, right?
Yeah, I just was rooted and I wanted to be with my boys. That was my next dream job, if you would. Like, I just wanted to be really present with them. My parents were really present with me, and I wanted that. And I wasn't seeing that happening in my career trajectory the way it was.
Mhm.
So I just let everyone know this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to figure it out. And I knew I had to figure it out. It was okay if I'm choosing to walk away from this paycheck and this, not that it's super stable in the entertainment industry, but I had work. I just knew I had to figure it out. And I think once I started down that path of opening my own business, I saw that confidence. I started researching, is this
Mhm.
business really right for me? And then I got into it and I started and I said, oh, I'm actually good at this. I'm actually
Mhm.
growing the business and I'm learning and I'm liking the creativity in it. And that kind of fueled me to really turn out those voices and be like,
Yeah.
no, I'm going to make this work and watch me.
Yeah, yeah. So what was it that drew you to the buying the franchise and starting your own business? Because that could be, it probably was pretty intimidating, scary.
I think I wasn't in my right mind frame. I think that whole period, I was lost and I
Yeah.
had no one to turn to and have support, or I was really in like a silo figuring it out. But I would see that my 3-year-old at the time, who was very energetic, would only sit still when he would build. And we had Legos and Duplos, and he would build things. And that's when I could walk away and do the dishes or make dinner. And so I started thinking there's something to this kind of STEM education where you're teaching kids to think like an engineer and build. And I was like, maybe I could create a children's center. So I had this whole plan built out about building this like community center for kids to come in and learn how to build robotics, coding, Legos, all of that.
Mm,
And then in my research, I found a franchise that did just that. And it was, and I didn't know anything about franchising, but I did realize that, you know what? They give you all the pieces to start that business.
yeah,
And that was really appealing to me as a first time business owner.
yeah.
And it was honestly, I can say the greatest decision I made because I had the support of the corporate office. I've
Mm,
become best friends with a lot of the other franchisees over the years. And it really taught me a lot and gave me that support and confidence to say, now I want to go out and build a bunch of other businesses because
mm,
I saw that success and I felt like it was what I wanted to be doing. So, yeah, it was my son who really inspired that thought to
mm.
start with.
Yeah, I love that example of you're noticing things in your day to day. And when it when people are stuck in the I don't know what else I would do or I don't know what comes next, that's something that I talk about often is, hey, let's start like paying attention to the things that you either notice you're good at, you enjoy, or the in your case, the people you love are enjoying it. And it's, oh wait, maybe there's something there. And just get your juices flowing because we are so often just getting in our own way because we're trying to be practical. We're trying to listen to too many people that don't know what we really value, right? Or thinking about the stability of the paycheck or whatever it is. And
Yeah,
so I think the best place to start is just being observant and noticing things.
I agree. That's a great point.
Give me one moment. So can you talk about like how you may have overcome self-doubt in your career change? What were some things that it relates a little bit to what kept you going when people were like, "What are you doing?" Did you do anything specific or have any tools that you leveraged in the process?
I say now that I am, I guess I've always been a believer that your career is not your identity. And that, yes, I was a television producer and I was proud of that, but I can change and do something else. And guess what? I'm still that. And I always joke that if Oprah called me tomorrow, I would go back into production and work with Oprah because she's my idol. But I am not, I haven't lost those skills. And I think when you think about changing, it's that mindset shift of, oh my gosh, people aren't going to know who I am anymore and they're going to judge me. And what if I fail? And I looked at it like, I'm still that same person and I can try something else. If it doesn't work, I can go back. And that's something that I think gave me a lot of assurance. And
Mm,
I also just was excited for something new. I needed a new challenge. And so I kept telling myself, like, okay, you can do this. Like, just pep talking myself every day. And there were a lot of hard days. I'm not going to say it was an easy thing at all. And I have a book coming out and I write about this story in the book about how the week I came back from training for the franchise business, the CEO said, okay, send an email out to your whole community saying that your business is open. And I was like, but it's not open. I'm not ready. I need to study more. I need to like
yeah.
look everything over that I just learned. And she said, nope, just email it out. And someone called me that day and said, "Oh, I need you to come and work a New York Fashion Week event tomorrow." Someone called out, "Can you do it?" And I was like, "Yes," because it was easy for me to put the new business to the side, not think about it because I was so stressed and go back to what was comfortable.
Yeah.
And it was that train ride home where I missed dinner with the kids and I was stressing over bedtime. And I was like, I had fun today, but that's not why I wanted to make this change.
Yeah.
And so I sent that email the very next day and I booked 2 partners for that business within the next few weeks. And I was like, you know what? Okay, things are changing. I'm being tested. Like, just keep going. But it's just, I had to constantly keep checking back in with myself to be like,
Yeah.
you're okay. You're not hurt. This is all going to take time. You can't be successful at your second act in the first week.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that example because we I have proof. This is proof in your story, but I'm sure other people have proof as well that like when you wanna make a change, oftentimes you're faced with an either or decision like, "Oh, you can do more of this that you've been doing," And in our mind, I'm like, with it is, oh, that's easy. I could do that. I know how to do that. Or you could go over here in the direction you've been planning this whole time, but it's the unknown piece, right?
Yeah.
And once and in your situation, you had the moment of going back and then,
Yeah.
nope, that's not it. It's reconfirming it to me,
Mhm.
right? And then sometimes we have the years going back,
Yeah.
right? And that's what happened with me because I had left teaching once before and worked in the interior design industry for about 3 years. And then I ended up back in teaching for another four. And thinking, "Oh, if I change this, if I change that, maybe it'll be different somehow," and it still wasn't, and
Mhm.
it still led me back to, "Okay, how do I get out of here?" Like, what do I need to do instead? And so,
What made you leave that time? Like,
the second time, I was at the point of ready for a new challenge. What's next for me? Where do I if I stay in education, where do I wanna go? And similar to you, thinking, "Oh, maybe I'll get a master's in education." And then, like, just all of those options, I was just like, "All of those sound terrible. I'm not interested in any of them. I'm gonna go into all this debt for why? I'm not even gonna enjoy it." And then when we had to go online to teach, I was building my website for my students, and I was like, "This is fun. Maybe I wanna do more of this." And so that's what made me try again.
yeah. And you could have just put that thought out of your head, but instead you tested the waters and ran with it. And that's incredible because a lot of people would just, oh no, I'll stick with what's safe and secure and what I know.
Yeah. And I mean, it really does too come down to paying attention to how your career was making you feel or like how it is affecting your life, like in the practicality of it too, right? I still felt the same way I'd always felt in teaching, just burnt out, stressed out, not feeling good about myself ever. And I was like, I don't want that. Like, I couldn't
Oh,
picture myself. Again, you keep talking about thinking long term, right?
yeah.
Like, I couldn't picture myself doing that for the rest of my life. And
Yes, or if you look at your boss and the principal, if you're not aspiring to move up to that next level, that's a huge red flag. And I found that for myself too. I was looking at these mostly men who were like these huge executive producers or showrunners, and I was like, they're never home with their families. They're never going on vacations. They're not seeing I don't know, I did not want that. And that's a red
yeah,
flag, I think, to really say, then what are you walking why are you climbing this ladder if you don't want to get to that next level?
yeah, I love that because I hadn't really reflected on it like that. But yeah, I like that. Yeah, because I never wanted to be a principal. People would be like, "Oh, is that going to be your next thing?" I'm like, "No, oh, no, thank you."
Yeah. I have a friend who's a principal and she is so stressed out, more so than in the classroom. It's a lot.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's those outside voices too of, "What do you why wouldn't you be?" I'm like,
Mm.
I have a laundry list of things to why. But yeah, and also knowing that, like, leaving education, coming into the corporate world, into the technology space, I am much happier and feeling more fulfilled, but also the same things come up, right? Like, wherever you go, there you are.
Mhm.
And I just think it's important to be able to recognize, okay, I'm willing to continue on this path, even though these things over here are hard because these things are matching what I want out of this job, right? For you, it's
Mhm.
your that family time, that creativity.
Yeah.
Um, and for me, it's like the flexibility of like my day and being able to actually enjoy myself because I'm making enough money to actually live, in a
Mhm.
way that I've wanted to for so long, but felt held back because I was on a teacher salary.
Right. Sadly, yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Can you, in a similar vein, but can you discuss maybe a specific tough moment that you went through in your career transition? And it could be to the franchise, it could be from the franchise to your career coaching right now, but and how you stayed resilient through that.
Mm. I think as my first business grew, it grew really fast and I didn't know how to it grew fast, but I didn't know that I needed to hire as soon as I
Mhm.
did. I should have hired sooner. I was putting myself out there, teaching all the classes and doing all the marketing and having all of the conversations with partners and families and doing it all. And once I finally started hiring, I realized I could step back. And then that was when I really felt like a business owner because I was more in
Mhm.
charge than like working in the business. And that was like a tough lesson to learn early on. And then as I started stepping back and years had gone and I had a big team in place, when I started building my coaching business, I was like, great, now I'll just step back. That business is running itself and I'll just concentrate on my clients, writing my book and doing my podcast. Okay, that's great. But I realized that it almost got harder because now everyone was so used to me being there. And so,
Mhm.
as much as I tried to pull back and I had a manager in place, I was being pulled back in all the time. And I went through, I guess it was almost 3 years. It was like 2.5 years of juggling both. And it
Mhm.
was like now I have double the work. And it was just a time where I was like, what do I do to get out of this? And that's when I decided to sell the first business because someone had told me, sell when your business is hot, get out then. And I was like, okay. But I never knew I would want to sell. Like I loved it. It was my
Yeah.
baby.
Yeah.
And that was a tricky time to emotionally separate myself from the baby that I had built and
Mhm.
say, okay, I'm ready to sell it because my heart is now with these other women who are my clients and I want to help them build these businesses and make these transitions for themselves. So
Mhm.
there was a really tricky period in there where I was going through the sale process and trying to distance myself. But now that it's over, I realize it all happened when it should have, but it was a lot of learning lessons in there.
Yeah, I think it's interesting when it's sell when the business is hot, but you're also like, you are the business in a way, like, and it's, but do I want to let go of this thing, this good thing that's like actually bringing me all this revenue and whatever? And I feel like we often do get caught up in that emotional piece, right? Of
Yeah.
that, how we're attached to things and attached to our career. Yeah.
Yeah.
Something to say about that?
Well, I was gonna say it was very similar you brought up too. It's similar to that first act of leaving your first job, and for me, leaving TV, going into the business is that identity and that piece of, "Oh, I don't know if I should be doing this," but then thinking, "Okay, I don't wanna work these double hours, and, this is just the way life is going, and I'm gonna get to start something new." But now that the business and all that stability is gone, it makes me have to, again, hustle really hard with my coaching like, I'm doing the same thing again, just 8 years later, of really trying to build this business now because that stability of the business that was really flourishing
Mhm.
is no longer there. But there's something I'm learning about myself that I like that challenge,
Mhm.
and it's just, okay, that had its time, then this had its time, and now I'm on to the next thing. But yeah, and you just know it's scary, it's uncertain, but you just have to hustle and make it work.
Mhm. Yeah, the idea that if I did it once, I can do it again. And I think everybody gets to a point. A lot of people start their own business whilst continuing to do their 9 to 5 job or whatever it
Mhm.
is. And that's a great place to start. It is being aware enough, like you were, right? You were pulled in two different directions and say, which one has to give? Because ultimately, I have to make that decision because I can't sustain this long term. And when I'm ready for a new challenge, I'm ready for something more. Yeah, this is stable and has been for 8 years, but I know I can do something else. I've already done it before, and I'm betting on myself. You said that earlier too.
I wanna make sure we talk about the financial piece too, because it's if you are in a corporate job and you're thinking of starting a business, you can start building that on the side while you have the paycheck, and I didn't necessarily do that the first time around when I
Mhm.
left TV because it was a
Right.
kind of an impromptu decision,
Yeah.
but here, I really did make sure financially that I was in a good place that I could handle just having my coaching business.
Yeah.
So, it wasn't like I just left it again because I do have 2 kids and a husband and a family
Yeah.
and a house and a mortgage and all of that, but it was taking a look at the finances and saying, "Okay, can I afford to do this? For how long can I afford to
Mhm.
do this before?" And it was so I
Right.
feel like it's important that everyone does look at their finances when they're
Yes.
making this decision, and no one likes to look at their finances. It's not fun. But when you do it, you have to be honest and say, should I be working for a little bit longer and saving?
Yeah.
Or do I make this leap and then get a side job or figure out multiple streams of income so
Mhm.
that you do feel safe?
Yeah, absolutely. Having a plan is better than not having a plan, and
Absolutely.
sometimes life maybe unfolds in a way where, like, for you the first time around, but if you can be as prepared as possible, yeah, there is that because I ultimately, with taking the risk of changing your career comes this foundation of safety and security that you are seemingly losing, so you need to replace it with a plan or a back the I wanna say investment, the savings and things like that so that you can continue to have the safety net that you feel, confident you can move forward with all the
Yeah,
other stuff. Oh, yeah, thank you for bringing
absolutely.
that up.
Sure.
Yeah, so tell me a little bit about you mentioned earlier how your wheels got turning in regards to career, coaching. So, can you talk a little bit more about how that came to be and this business, your third act?
It was really those conversations from those customers asking me how I went from this to that. And then I had friends who I was helping. And I was really into podcasts at the time, and I still
Mhm,
am. But I was listening and I was listening to these friends and customers. And I was like, I think there are a lot of women who just feel stuck and that they aren't allowing themselves to see what else is out there. And so I actually started my podcast first, and it is called Second Act Success. And on the podcast, I wanted to just interview women who made that leap from one thing to the other and have those conversations so that women can listen and say, "Oh, if she can do it, I can do it."
yeah,
That was really important to me. And I still have those type of conversations. I have some solo podcasts now as well, but I still love those conversations because I think it's so cool to hear someone went from a teacher into technology or whatever it might be, because someone else can be listening and say, "Oh, I never thought about that." And I have a lot of stories of women who have started businesses too. And yeah, so that's where it started. And then maybe, I don't know, 3 or 4 months into the podcast, I was really just diving in and learning all about it, is people started asking me if I coach. I was getting messages from listeners, and I was
yeah,
like, "I think I do want to." So I got
mm,
some certifications and started my coaching then, launched a course, had a membership for a while, and yeah, just started getting, even actually a lot of my first clients were local clients who knew me as the owner of this business.
yeah,
And they wanted to start their own business, and so they knew I was doing this transition and hired me. And I still work with a lot of local moms that are
mm,
trying to launch businesses, which is great. But yeah, it's just evolved from there. I still have the podcast, and now I do speaking, and I just wrote a book. So it's exciting,
mhm,
just trying to help other people think that, or I guess see that there's more out there, and to at least like tap into it and try. And worst comes
mm,
to worst, you stay where you are, but at least give
right.
yourself that chance.
Yeah, yeah, I love that, and I have a similar experience in regards to how it came about for me because I too would hear women say, "Oh, I could never do what you did." Like, "How did you even do that?" And just brush it off like it wasn't that even a possibility. And now that I'm glad I've done it, I'm like, "No, living in a
Yeah.
facility, yeah, and shake them." But
What happened when you came back? I'm sorry, I'm like going
no, you're
asking a
fine.
question. But what happened when you went back to teaching the second time? What did the other teachers say? Were they like, "We knew you'd be back," or how was that coming back from?
It was different teacher. It
Oh,
wasn't
okay.
the same school or the same staff or
Okay.
anything. So I, in all honesty, kept it under wraps that I had even been doing something other than when they said, "Oh, what was the last school that you taught at?" Or like, "Where did you last teach?" And I would tell them,
Yeah.
not that it was like 3 years before that, but that was the last school I taught at. And I just didn't really share that piece because I felt like I couldn't, like nobody would understand.
Yeah, I thought I was picturing you going back to the same school, and I
Oh,
feel like that would have been a little interesting to see what people think. But even then, it's like the whole idea of you can try something and you can come back, and
yeah.
maybe you would have ended up staying there until retirement. You never know. But
Yeah.
you tried it. You tried something else.
And that's the thing too, because my first time leaving the classroom, I And then coming back, there was a part of me that felt like I failed at it the first time. And when I was considering making the change again, there's a part of me that was like, what are people going to say? What are they like? You're doing this again. What's wrong with you? And yet I worked with a career coach that at the time that said that exact thing that you're saying. What's the worst thing that could happen?
Mm,
And you didn't fail the last time. What'd you learn from the last time? How are you going to do it different this time? And so yeah, all those things really building that confidence. Okay, okay, it's not weird. Like people do this every day and I deserve to be enjoy my job and she talked about who you're listening to and you get to choose that.
yeah, and a lot of people probably look at you and I and say, "Oh, I wish we could do that." And they could, they may
Yeah.
not choose to, but it's just different. It's just there's some people that stay at the same job until retirement, and they just have a different personality, but it's not
Mm,
better or worse, I think, in either
yeah.
scenario.
Yeah, and that also brings to mind this concept of I've heard women say, "Oh, I should just be grateful that I have a job, that I have a paycheck, that I am employed, whatever."
Yeah,
And you can be grateful and you can also want more for yourself. It both are allowed to exist at one time.
I
But
agree.
eventually you're going to have to decide which one's more important, you know?
And I don't think it's a selfish decision, and I think sometimes that's what people say when they say it like that, or I'll just suck it up. Something I got once from someone in one of my webinars I did. I remember she said, "Who am I to want to try something different? I should just suck it up. Not everyone loves their job." And I remember just
Mhm.
being like heartbroken by that of, yeah, I know there's lots of people who don't like their job, but it doesn't mean that everyone has to not like it. And if you're self-aware enough to know that you're unhappy and there's something
Mhm.
else potentially out there, like just at least try. But no, you don't have to
Mhm.
suck it up and be unhappy because quote unquote everyone else is.
Yeah. Yeah, it's making that generalization, but often we're just projecting our own insecurities, right?
Very true.
Yeah.
I'm proud of you.
Oh, thank you. You could call this my third act as well. Yeah, I love that you keep calling it second act. And I don't know, where did that come from? How did that
It was a play on TV and
Oh,
entertainment,
yeah.
and yeah, and I don't know, it just popped in my head one day, and I was like, "I think that's what it is. It's really just
Oh,
starting over," and yeah, so it does play a lot into, like, TV and entertainment, and in my book, it's called Start Your Second Act, and I talk a lot about I do some comparisons to the entertainment industry because
mhm,
as I was writing it, I was like, "It really is very similar in creating," because as a producer, for those that don't know, you really take an idea that a studio or a production company has, and you have to figure out every single element to bring that idea to the television screen. And
mhm,
it's the same thing in your life or wanting to start that second act or open that business. You're taking that idea and figuring out how can I put those pieces
mhm,
together to accomplish that goal. And so
mhm.
it was fun to pull back in some of the TV and entertainment stuff when I was writing too. It was fun.
Yeah, that's cool. Now, when I think of like a TV producer, it sounds glamorous because it's TV, right? Or when you list off like the places, the networks you worked with or whatever. But how would you describe your experience in that entertainment world?
Glamorous isn't what I would use because it wasn't like beautiful ball gowns and on the red carpet all the time, but
Mm,
it was very exciting. I mean, it was my childhood dream. So
mm,
I was on red carpets, I was at premieres, I was traveling
very cool.
to countries that I never would have traveled to and working with celebrities. So that part might have been glamorous, but it
Mm,
was really long hours and
yeah.
being stuck sometimes with casting crew that you don't necessarily like or with some diva-ish people and that you're stuck with
Mm,
for 12, 14, 16 hours around the clock
mm,
on
mm,
location. And there's so many times where I've missed friends' weddings or big events because I was away or not knowing, like it's very gig economy. Like you go from
mm,
project to project. So someone would send me an invitation for a wedding that was 9 months away. And I'm like, I don't know if I can say yes because I don't know what I'm working on then. So it's
yeah,
stressful in that aspect too of always having
yeah,
to figure out what your next gig is so that you have a paycheck coming.
Yeah.
So I think it's a toss up. I wouldn't trade it for anything, but it's,
Yeah.
yeah, lots of stories to tell
I'm
my kids
sure.
one day. Yeah. Maybe
That
some stories.
maybe. Yeah, I just love that you were able to do something that you always wanted to do, that you really loved, and you're able to cherish that time, right? But also, all like you said in the beginning, our career is not our identity, and that we take whatever our experience is with us through
Yeah.
along the way. And so I just love that visual to consider and look back on, challenge maybe the audience to look back on your life experiences and find the good spots that you're grateful have brought you to where you are today, and then how can you leverage those as you continue to move forward.
Hmm. Absolutely. And I think sometimes it takes someone else to look at your experience and your skills to show that you're not everyone can do that. So they are special and you should treasure
Yeah.
the accolades that you got or this accomplishment or this leadership training you went to, whatever it is, because that is something that you should be proud of and you should remember and you should carry with you. And yeah, think of those out of the box ways that you can use that experience and those skills to create something that is really joyful for you.
Yeah. Yeah, that fits into your life in the way that you want to be living it. Can you share with the audience a little bit more about how they can learn more from you or work with you, and more about your book, when that's coming out, and all that?
Yes, I have actually. The book comes out May 7th. It's called Start Your Second Act. And I actually have a second act journal that I created that you can get your ideas from your head, put them on paper, and start working on them. And you can get that for free. It's at startyoursecondact.com. And that's the book website. And then everything else is over at secondactsuccess.co. I have resources in my podcast and how to work with me over there.
Awesome. Thank you so much for being here. It was a pleasure chatting and sharing our different experiences. And I think that's one of my favorite things about talking to women who have made career changes is like the similarities, because we're all in a similar boat, right? Like we're
Sure.
just doing the best we can with the information that we have at the time. And when it comes to the career change piece, we're all working through stuff to make it happen. So thank you for being here and sharing your experience.
Thank you, Brittany.
Thanks for tuning in to the Career Change for Women podcast. If you've loved this episode, leave a review. It helps more women find the show. Feeling stuck in your career? Let's connect. Follow me on social media at Shift Your Day Job, or email me at shiftyourdayjob@gmail.com. Until next time, I'm Brittany Cates. Let's shift your day job together.